In this episode, many Western historians and scholars describe an extraordinary fact about Prophet Muhammad. Of all men in history, his life is the most thoroughly witnessed and recorded, down to the smallest details. Stay tuned. You'll hear surprising quotes and perspectives you've likely never come across about any other person in history. In the study of ancient and medieval history, one theme repeats itself. Biographical records of prominent figures are often sparse, and where they exist, legend tends to overshadow fact. In this regard, the Prophet of Islam stands uniquely apart. Historians and scholars acknowledge that his life is the most carefully documented and preserved in human history, even in the mundane details of his words, actions, and daily habits. Let us now listen to their words. Chapter 1. His life was witnessed by thousands who left records. Prophet Muhammad began his prophetic mission at the age of 40, starting with a handful of followers from his immediate family who believed in him. By the time he passed away at the age of 63, the entire Arabian Peninsula had embraced Islam. A year before his death, he performed the farewell pilgrimage in the presence of 40,000 believers, and by the time he left this world, an estimated 100,000 people had either seen him or heard him speak, according to historians.
Few religions have been founded in plain day like Islam, which now counts its believers by more than 100 millions, and which enlarges its domain from day to day, unaided. Most clearly and sharply does Muhammad stand out against the horizon of history. Those who knew him, not for hours or days or weeks, but from birth to death, almost during his whole life, count not by units or dozens, but by thousands upon thousands, whose names and whose biographies have been collected, and his witnesses were men in the fullness and ripeness of age and wisdom, some his bitterest enemies. Emanuel Deutsch, German Jewish scholar of Semitic and Middle Eastern studies.
Chapter 2. Life history authentically preserved.
Of all the legislators and conquerors, there are none whose life was written with greater authenticity and in more detail by their contemporaries than was that of Muhammad. Voltaire, French Enlightenment writer and historian.
It may be truly affirmed that of all known legislators and conquerors, not one can be named, the history of whose life has been written with greater authenticity and fuller detail than that of Muhammad. In fact, strip his biography of the prodigies which Asiatic writers have ever affected, and what remains may confidently defy incredulity itself. John Davenport, British Orientalist.
We may repeat that we have a picture of the character and work of Muhammad in Medina, which is sufficiently reliable, coherent, and honest. Francesco Gabrieli, Professor of Arabic Language and Literature at the University of Rome, and editor of Encyclopedia Italiana, and a most distinguished Italian Arabist.
Muhammad's life is known to us from different sources. The Quran contains allusions to events in his life and the life of the young Muslim community. Furthermore, his sayings and reports about his actions were carefully preserved and collected to form, in the course of the first centuries, a large compendium, showing how his community saw him. Annemarie Schimmel, German Orientalist specializing in Islamic and Persian studies and Sufism and professor at Harvard University.
Chapter 3. Even minute details are recorded.
From that time forth, Muhammad's life, hitherto obscure and dark, stands out in its minutest details. He now is judge, lawgiver, king, even to the day of his death. We shall leave our readers to follow out the minutiae of his life in any of the biographies at their hand, which, from this period forth, no longer differ in any essential point. Emanuel Deutsch.
Prophet Muhammad is also a historic personality, every event of whose life has been most carefully recorded, and even the minutest details preserved intact for posterity. His life and works are not wrapped in mystery. K.S. Ramakrishna Rao, Indian philosopher and psychologist, and served as chairman of Gitam School of Gandhian Studies.
Muhammad is a clear historical character, the minutest details of whose conduct and demeanor are recorded for us by his own contemporaries. Marmaduke Pickthall, English novelist, diplomat and journal editor.
Even the food that the Prophet liked and disliked is carefully recorded. Annemarie Schimmel.
Chapter 4. His religion came in full view of history.
Islam was born not amidst the mystery which cradles the origin of other religions, but rather in the full light of history. Ernest Renan, French Orientalist, historian and biblical scholar.
The development of Islam, at least as compared with other world religions, is open to the clear light of history, and it presents us with yet another proof that the prophetic personality is the original source of the new religious creation. Tor Andrae, scholar of religious history, and bishop in the Swedish Church.
Mohammedanism or Islam is ushered into existence in the full daylight of history. James A. Montgomery, Scottish Orientalist, historian and Anglican priest and professor of Arabic and Islamic studies at University of Edinburgh.
The story of Muhammad is extremely clear. We know as much of Muhammad as we do of men who lived much closer to our epoch. His external record, his youth, his relatives, his habits, are neither legendary nor hearsay. R.V.C. Bodley, British Army officer in World War II, traveller and screenwriter. Chapter 5. Comparison with other historical figures. If we knew as much of the private lives of other prophets as we know of Muhammad, some of them would be less exalted than they now appear to be on the basis of the fragmentary surviving literature, endlessly sifted throughout the centuries. Theodor Nöldeke, eminent German Orientalist, specializing in Old Testament studies and Semitic languages including Arabic, Persian and Syriac.
We know less of Zoroaster and Confucius than we do of Solon and Socrates, less of Moses and of Buddha than we do of Ambrose and Augustine. We know indeed some fragments of a fragment of Christ's life. But who can lift the veil of the 30 years that prepared the way for the three? What do we know of his mother, of his home life, of his early friends, and his relation to them, of the gradual dawning, or it may be the sudden revelation of his divine mission? But in Mohammedanism everything is different. Here, instead of the shadowy and the mysterious, we have history. We know everything of the external history of Muhammad. His youth, his appearance, his relations, his habits, the first idea and the gradual growth, intermittent though it was, of his great revelation. While for his internal history, after his mission had been proclaimed, we have a book absolutely unique in its origin, in its preservation, and in the chaos of its contents, but on the authenticity of which no one has ever been able to cast a serious doubt. R. Bosworth Smith, British Orientalist, who taught at Trinity College, University of Oxford.
Thank you for watching.